Hey, HannahMouse1 here. Welcome to another devlog video. Not a farmer's life this time, but a game jam. Specifically, the Fireside game jam run by Helper Wesley here on YouTube. This jam ran for 10 days over 2 weekends, and I got lucky because the first of these was a 3-day weekend. Thanks, Charlie, giving me a bit more time. On the flip side of that, I'm also working towards my rapidly approaching A-levels and had college production performances on 2 nights, so it's not like I had endless time to spend on this. So on that first Friday night, I checked out Helper Wesley's video to see what the theme was. It was Guide. This theme didn't give me much right off the bat. I tried making a mood board, but that really wasn't helping me, so I decided to take a shower and mull things over. Even that didn't give me much, but I had a single idea for a possible game, so I just decided that I had to run with it and opened up a Scratch project. Yes, I am using Scratch for this. My basic idea was a game where you play as the wind, guiding a balloon through a park. So I mocked up the basic movement for a circle-shaped hitbox, applying gravity, then moving away from the mouse when you click. The closer your mouse is to the balloon, the bigger an impact you have on it. It's subtle, but it's there. As soon as I got a simple prototype working, I jumped over to doing the artwork. I decided to go for a very stylized look with bold black outlines and a saturated palette. I made the balloon, creating costumes for it moving left and right and one in between, one for popping as well. I also started making the environment and made it so that the balloon pops on collision with it. Oh, and I gave the balloon a face, which totally wasn't inspired by this balloon from Doki Doki Universe, I swear. Then I tackled getting the camera to scroll. Scratch doesn't have camera features, but you could fake it by fixing the player to the center of the screen and moving the background instead. And getting the objects to move was the easy part, but I wasn't sure how to go at generating the objects. The first method I tried involved creating a list of all the obstacles, with information about them that a clone could pull and represent on screen. The exposition, the costume, what have you, but it quickly became clear that this was way too complex of a system given my time constraints, so I changed tack. Instead, I'll draw each screen width worth of obstacles per costume, then cycle through them. It's way simpler than generating each individual object. The only drawback is that my first method would have allowed me to procedurally generate the level, whereas this new method has to have a set path. But given the small scope that I'm going for here, I think that's fine. Note that I'm only drawing the parts of the environment that the balloon can collide with, so I drew the leaves of the tree but not the trunk. I got that scrolling nicely and adjusted a couple of values to get things looking smooth. I drew in the second panel and then had to figure out getting one to flow into the next seamlessly, which took a bit of figuring out. The clones had to know where you were in the world and shift their costume appropriately, but eventually I got that working as I wanted it to. And then it was a whole lot of art, as I made obstacles for the entire length of the course. As it is a fixed course, I wanted it to be really interesting to keep the player engaged, so I had a lot of fun coming up with different challenges and environments. You start at a park where you pass over a lake, navigate through some denser woodland, and then enter what I've dubbed the suburbs, where you go through a play park complete with a castle climbing frame, roundabout and slide, and then pass through some massive back gardens, one with a pool and another with a greenhouse. The final area is the city, which includes a construction site. I was careful to keep the colours consistent across the map, so bright green in one panel is the same as bright green in another. Same for orange, same for blue, and so on. When I was designing these, my main focus was on making the player alternate between go to the top of the screen then to the bottom, with the occasional squeeze through a tight space. And then I made all of the non-collidable parts of these obstacles, so the tree trunks, parts of the climbing frame, and so on. These sections are distinguishable from the rest of the obstacle because the collidable elements have more saturated colours and have bold black outlines. And because I didn't want my game to be completely impossible, and because playtesting things near the end of the course was really difficult, I quickly threw in some checkpoints. I then went on to some juicy polish elements, starting with a mouse effect when you click that's supposed to look like a gust of wind that's blowing the balloon along. And then I started adding in some moving obstacles to really bring the world to life. Some of these are mostly aesthetic, like the balloons on the cart or the flags on the climbing frame. Others, like the fishermen, aren't any more difficult than they would be as a static obstacle, and the animation is just to make them feel actually alive. The bird serves to block off the top of the slide, forcing the player to go through it, and the construction workers movement makes it slightly harder to avoid. By far the hardest obstacle is the teen listening to music, because it tests your timing as you have to dodge the note. The little girl on the bench isn't an obstacle, but is actually the end point of the level, as the objective is to unite the balloon with the girl. I also made some lights for the crossing in the city segment. Next, I sorted the wind states. I made it so that the balloon flies into the little girl's now outstretched hand, and I then animated a cutscene where she grabs the string using some squash and stretch to make it feel appropriately juicy, and then the eyes meet. Ends with the little girl on her bench kicking her legs again, but now she has her balloon friend, and it says "you win" above her head. And because on playtesting the crossing part of the city was jarringly empty, I threw in a skater obstacle who moved back and forth. He's not difficult to avoid, but he makes the area feel more filled out and alive. I also mocked up a quick temporary title screen, which involved coming up with a title. I went with blow the balloon because it was quick and to the point. I added a couple of floaty effects and made the title move away from the mouse, but those will get the axe when I redo this later. I also make it so hitting play starts the game. Then I made the background art with the colours getting more desaturated with a stronger blue hue based on how far away from the camera they are. For the park, this was just a lot of trees and bushes, but I also also added fences and hedges for areas in the suburbs, buildings in the city, and so on. It makes the course feel like an actual lived-in environment. The hardest part was because I didn't want each panel to be super obvious. I had some trees and things span across 2 costumes, and I had to make sure that these lined up seamlessly. You might be able to tell a bit here and there, but overall I think it's pretty good. But now that I've sorted the main game and the ending, I need to sort out the start. So I animated a cutscene that basically serves to tell you that your objective is to find this little girl you saw in the park. I also added some sidebars so you can't see the obstacles popping in from the side of the screen. I then created some simple background art that goes behind the level, reflective of the area that you're in, and moves slightly in response to the movement of the balloon, creating a parallax-esque effect. This was inspired by how the backgrounds for different biomes work in one of my favourite games, Terraria. I get these backgrounds to fade smoothly in and out. I then pulled some sounds from the Scratch library to add some auditory feedback for the player's interactions. And then there's music. Now, I'm not a musician and I had a lot of tracks to bang out in a very short amount of time. I have this really dumb workflow for creating music that gets me something that I'd class as passable, to say the least. So I use Soundtrap, which is a free online alternative to something like GarageBand, and I find an instrument that fits the vibe that I want for the track. For the melody, I hit a whole bunch of random notes, no planning, no rhyme, no reason, and then I got to the piano roll and organized the notes into something that doesn't sound totally abhorrent, namely by making it so that the notes don't overlap. I then duplicate the melody and switch the instrument. I manipulate the notes either by simplifying it or else by shifting things up and down an octave until I have something that I don't completely hate. I made tracks for the entire park, the pond, the suburbs, and the city, getting these to fade in and out as you enter or exit the area. I also created a track for the title page, and then I overhauled how the title page actually looks so that it looks a bit more like a game that you would actually want to play, and I turned that page into a basic thumbnail. I then decided that I hated the suburban music, so I redid it using the same instruments, but this time starting with the drum line and aligning everything else with the beat, which sounded a lot better. And I added some sounds to the title screen as well as the moving objects, making their volume fade in and out as appropriate. And the last thing I had to do was put together some background art for the itch page. Overall, this was really fun, and it's nice to take a break from my main project to make something quick, low stakes, and simple, and I always appreciate the practice. Check out the link in the description if you want to give Blow the Balloon a go. There'll also be a link to the jam as well as Helper Wesley's channel if you're somehow here and haven't watched his stuff. But apart from that, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. It lets me know that this is what you want to see more of, and apart from that, I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!